And what I want to do today is to give you some ideas that when it comes to dealing with risk in your areas of interest, that will make it easier for you, make it simpler for you to actually manage your risks effectively. So, and that's where I'm coming from. And we know that uncertainty is a fact of life. Wherever we look, there are question marks, things that rain down on us and stop us making progress. There are the big things like maybe climate change, or new technology, or new diseases, which of course you guys, your colleagues will know a lot about, or political change, the demographics, lots of things, lots of uncertainty. And if we think back to maybe 100 years or 150 years ago, it really wasn't like that. But you would pretty much know when a child was born 150 years ago, where they would live, who they would marry, what job they would do, and where they would die. Because that was, our life was very much smaller in those days. You went into your father's business if you were a man or a boy, and if you're a woman, you got married and you brought up the family. And you stayed within maybe a 10 or 20 mile radius of your home. And my wife is part of a farming family in the east of England. Every single one of 80 relatives, apart from her, lives within a 5 mile radius of the farm. And they all are involved in some kind of farming, except for her. I rescued her. So, and that's it just still today. But nowadays we have such mobility, we have so many opportunities, so much change, that anybody could do anything, almost. And so we're used to this idea that we have to deal with uncertainty in all its forms. And I want to start this session by asking you how you feel about that. If you look ahead to the future as you see it, as it affects your kind of projects, and the things that you're trying to do for the people you serve, how does that uncertainty in the future make you feel? Do you feel threatened? Do you feel it's a big, ugly monster out there that's trying to get you, that it's going to kill you, that you need to protect yourself, that the right solution to an uncertain future is to be very, very careful? Well, maybe that's partly true. And there certainly are some things out there which could hurt us, either in terms of reputation or funding or actual physical harm to people. And there are some things about the uncertain future that make you feel a little bit sick inside, a little bit queasy, feel anxious, feel nervous, and you kind of retreat and want to protect yourself in the face of an uncertain future. But there is another view of an uncertain future which we might think about, which is to say, yes, it's uncertain, but uncertainty is challenging. Uncertainty is a good thing. Uncertainty opens us to the possibility of doing new things and different things and better things. If everything was certain, we would just have to follow the track and do what we've always done. But because it is uncertain, then we have the possibility of doing things differently. And if we rise to that challenge and roll our sleeves up, and our response to that uncertainty is to be brave and step into it and engage with it, then we have a chance to do something really dramatic and innovative and really make a difference in this world. So which of those two views of an uncertain future is right? Is it true that the future uncertainty is dangerous and we need to be careful? Or is it true that future uncertainty is challenging and we need to be brave? And the answer is both. Of course, there are some things that we need to be very, very careful about, and some things that we need to be very brave about. And everything we do that is worth doing involves taking risk. We just need to take the right risks, to take them with our eyes open, and to take them safely, so that we don't take on too much risk, take on more risk than we know how to handle. So some of you may be the sort of cautious types who think, I don't really like risk, especially in my world of projects or in this world of development aid, because, it's all about the service that we can provide, it's about using our donor money wisely, it's about delivering services that are really going to transform lives. And any uncertainty threatens that, and I don't like that. Let's remove the uncertainty from our projects. The bad news is you can't. It's an integral part of every project we do, an integral part of life itself, that we need to take risk and handle uncertainty. Or maybe you're one of those people like this who says, well, I love uncertainty. That's why I go to work every day, helps me to engage with interesting things, interesting situations, to actually prove myself against something which is really worth doing. And the more risk, the better. Bring it on. Well, you might be right, but in some areas you might need to just be a little bit more careful. Maybe you're being complacent. Maybe you're being irresponsible by taking too much risk. we have to recognise that we have a personal preference for the right amount of risk that we're comfortable with, but that's not necessarily always the right amount of risk that we should take in order to respond to the situation in front of us. So how do we know? What I'd like to do is to talk to you about how risk management as a discipline, as a way of thinking, can help us to handle both of those different views of risk, as it being dangerous or it being challenging. And obviously, wherever we look, we find uncertainty around us. In the world of business or organisations, you find that risk hits you pretty much everywhere, from technical sources, management sources, commercially or externally, and it operates on multiple levels. We have a lot of business uncertainty, even in your kind of organisation. When it comes down to the area of business, we have to take risks, as I said, because risk is related to reward, and we have to get that balance right. But it's not just in terms of strategic risk, we also have risk at the working level. That we have to choose what are the right projects and programs and portfolios to engage in. We have to make sure that we're doing the right sorts of mix of activities in order to achieve our strategic goals, as well as doing those things efficiently and effectively. And right down at the kind of operational tactical level of projects, of course we have to make sure that we're managing our risk effectively, because zero risk is neither possible nor desirable. So risk and reward works at the kind of project level as well as at the big strategic level. So risk is unavoidable, whether it be at the strategic, business, organisational, at the kind of functional or portfolio kind of level, or at the tactical delivery, execution, project levels. Risk is always part of the environment. And we have a view as to what we mean by risk, and maybe some of these pictures might reflect what you think about risk. Is this your view? If we went round and I said, please describe or define risk in terms that mean something to you. Is it some big ugly thing that is just waiting to squish you, and you're hopelessly outnumbered, or you're just not up to the job? This is actually a real job in North Korea. There's lots of turnover on this job. Well, I don't think I'd want it to be my job. Or risk is just some horrible thing that's kind of lurking out there and you can't quite make it out, but it's going to get you. I don't think that's a very good view of risk. And I'd like to take us back to first principles, just to get our concept right first, because thinking determines behaviour. So how should we think about risk? Let's just start with this question. Is risk the same as uncertainty? Well, no, because all risks are uncertain, but not all uncertainties are risks. How many uncertainties are there in the world? Billions. How many do we need to write down in our risk register and think about and manage and communicate about? 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, but not billions. So somehow we filter the big world of billions of uncertainties to make a handful of risks. How do we decide which of those billions are the ones we need to focus on? What is the filter that we use? There are different sort of theories and academics, philosophical views of this. I have a very simple filter, 3 words. I'd like to say that risk is uncertainty that matters, because not all uncertainties matter. Is it going to rain in Kazakhstan tomorrow afternoon? I don't know, I don't care. Or maybe some of you have got projects over there, I don't know. But for me, it's irrelevant. It's an uncertainty. It can't affect anything I'm interested in. It's an uncertainty that doesn't matter. Is it going to rain in Barcelona this evening when I'm going out for dinner with some colleagues? I don't know, probably, but that's an uncertainty that matters to me. Why does it matter? Why does one matter and one doesn't? Because of my objectives. Risk is always and only defined in relation to objectives. That's how we know what matters. It matters that we achieve our objectives because we're doing projects that actually make a difference, that create products and services that people want and need, that are actually making a difference on the ground, changing lives, transforming situations. And those objectives matter. So any uncertainty that, if it happened, had the potential to affect achievement of our objectives, that's going to be a risk that we need to know about, that we need to think about, that we need to try and respond to, that we need to talk about and tell others about. That's the difference between a risk and an uncertainty. So if you wanted to kind of test your risk register, if you have a list of risks on your project, it should have 2 characteristics. Everything on your risk register should be uncertain. It might or might not happen. It hasn't happened yet, and it might never happen. But it also should be something that matters. If it did happen, it would affect our objectives, and then we know that we cared about it. And very often we find things in risk registers which are not uncertain. They're problems, they're issues, they're constraints, they're requirements, they're things we don't like, but they're true, they're not uncertain. They don't belong in the risk register. Or we find things in the risk register that kind of ought to be there, but if they happen, nobody would really care. It wouldn't really affect the project in any material way, though they don't belong there. What we want to see is the uncertainties that matter because they could affect our objectives. And if we look into formal definitions, there is actually an ISO standard for risk management. It's ISO there's also a blank here. ISO 31000. That just links those two concepts of uncertainty and objectives together. Risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So that's all clear so far. The first key principle, key concept of risk is that risk is uncertainty that matters. And you should hopefully remember that. That's easy enough for you to remember, isn't it? You make notes. But let me just suggest something else that's important. And the title of my talk is then Creating Silver Linings. So why are we talking then about silver linings when risks are bad things that could threaten us and hurt us and take us off track? Well, the ISO standard has a number of footnotes to the definitions. ISO standards aren't very interesting, but sometimes they say useful things. And there's a footnote beneath this. It says, risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. Note, the effect could be positive or negative. There are positive risks, upside risks, good risks, as well as bad risks. What a strange idea. Surely risk is always and only bad. Well, I don't think so. If we've got these two ideas of uncertainty that matters, and I ask you how big is a particular risk, you have two things to think about. Uncertainty that matters, how uncertain, how much does it matter? And uncertainty we can describe using words like probability, or frequency, or likelihood, or chance. And then the effect on objectives, we might call it an impact, or a consequence, or a result. And all risks have those two halves. But here is an interesting question. This is a silly picture I found on the internet. And it illustrates to me a very important second principle about risk. So here is the mouse. The mouse is a project manager. And here is his project. And his project has a number of risks in it. And so he's doing some good risk management. The first risk he's identified is the trap. And the risk is that he could be killed or injured. So what he's doing is he's got his little helmet on. He's going very, very carefully, trying to make sure that he's not killed or injured. Great. Good project management, good risk management. In our projects, there are things that could kill us or injure us. Things that could waste time, that could waste money, that could damage reputation, that could injure people, that could take away from our benefits that we want to deliver. And we have to see those things and protect ourselves and go very, very carefully. Because we don't want things to go wrong in our projects, obviously. But that is not the only uncertainty in this project that the mouse has to manage. There is another uncertainty that matters to the mouse, and it's this. It's the cheese. Can I get the cheese off the trap? Because it's not definite that he's absolutely going to get the cheese, it's a possibility. And he has to do that in order to succeed. In fact, what he has to do is to manage two things at the same time. He has to not be killed or injured and get the cheese off the trap. So if he gets the cheese but he's fatally wounded, he's failed. If he's not injured but he doesn't get the cheese, he's failed. And we are like the mouse in our projects. We have to stop the bad things happening, but we also have to get the cheese. So what does cheese mean in our projects and programs? Cheese means value. Cheese means benefits. Cheese means the products and services that we're trying to develop that people need. And those things are uncertain. We're not guaranteed we're going to get the benefits out of our projects. We're not guaranteed that we can do things on time and within budget. It's difficult because projects are uncertain. But we've got to do those things at the same time as not creating damage. There are two types of uncertainty that we have to manage in our projects at the same time. So when we bring bring this to our definition of risk, and obviously we have to do it in the most efficient and effective way, and there's usually a better way to get the most cheese whilst minimising the risk. When we're thinking about which impacts matter, it's not just the bad ones. There are uncertainties that harm us, things that could make us late or overspent, but there are also things in the future that may not happen, but if they do happen, they help us. They are actually uncertainties that matter, which means that they come under the heading of risks. And both the uncertainties that could help us and the ones that could hurt us need to be managed. We can't just deal with the potential bad things and then hope that things go all right in our projects. As professional project people, we have to go out of our way intentionally and deliberately to create value and benefits. We've got to make it happen. And so risk management is not only about preventing potential problems, it's also about finding potential benefits. There are two sides to risk, which means there are two sides to risk management. And so what we're about is, yes, threats, traps, of course. We need to find those things and stop them happening. A threat is something in the future that hasn't happened yet. It worries us because if it does happen, it matters. It hurts us, it slows us down, it damages value. But an opportunity is also an uncertainty that matters. It exists in the future, it hasn't happened yet, but if it does happen, it matters to us because it helps us achieve our goals. Both of those are uncertainties that matter. Both of them need to be managed in a proactive or intentional way. And this is what risk management is supposed to do. And if you look in the PMBOK guide, if you look in Prince 2, if you look in any of the kind of project management standards, the Japanese P2M2, or any of those standards, you will find this concept of risk being a double-sided idea. Most of us kind of think about it and ignore it because we're so focused on the bad things. Let's just stop all the bad things happening. And if good things come along, if some cheese just drops off and I can pick it up, well, that's fine. But we don't go out of our way to make it happen. And if we're going to be professional and proactive about our risk management, we need to be doing both. You see, risk management is like a radar. It scans the uncertain future and says, what is there out there which is coming my way that could affect me? And maybe it's a long way off, and maybe it's fuzzy and not very well defined, but if I see it, and it's big and it's coming my way, I need to do something about it. And it might be big and bad, in which case I need to steer away from it, or it might be big and good, in which case I need to steer towards it. And of course, the closer it gets, the better definition, the better understanding of it we'll have. But what we need is that early warning that says something is coming that you need to get ready for. Risk management gives us time to think and time to prepare instead of just something arrives in front of you and you have to deal with it. So it's really important for both good and bad. And the idea of risk management is to take a single process to deal with both threats and opportunities. So that we already know how to manage opportunities because we probably know how to manage threats. A threat is the same as an opportunity. The only difference is the sign of the impact. So one is positive and one is negative. So because they're the same thing, they're both uncertainties that matter, we can manage them in the same way. Now, I've got a slide which is a typical risk process, which kind of looks like that, which is really boring. So what I thought I'd do is instead of that, we were talking about simplifying things and using normal non-jargon language. Let me suggest to you that risk management is actually just asking and answering 6 questions. And if you know what the 6 questions are, then risk management becomes very easy and very simple. So let me put these up here. And each of these questions are things that you will want to know the answers to, whatever you're doing. The first question is, what am I trying to do? And that's objective setting. We need to be clear about what we're aiming at. What am I trying to achieve? It's the first part of any risk management process, but don't worry about risk management. It's obviously important to know what I'm trying to do, and you might say we if you prefer. The second question is, what might affect me? Clearly, if you've got something important to do, something that matters, that could affect other people, that's going to be delivering value or making a difference, if it's worth doing, you want to know if there's anything out there that could affect you in achieving your objectives and your goals. So clearly it's important to know what might affect you, right? Well, now this will probably give you a long list of things, And they're not all equally important. Some of them will be tiny little things that you don't need to worry about. Some will be massive, great important matters. So the third question is, which are the big ones? Which are the most important? Okay, so we can kind of rank or prioritise the things that might affect me doing what I need to do. This is obvious, this is just logical really. Now I've got a kind of short list of really important things that might affect me doing the things I want to do. So my next obvious question is, what shall I do about it? What shall I do to respond to these things? And I develop some actions, some targeted responses to the most important things that might affect me doing what I want to do. This is all completely obvious, isn't it? You've gone very quiet. Okay, so then I do it, obviously. If I don't do it, there's no point. The fifth thing, there's an obvious question. Once I've done what I thought I would do, my next question is, did it work? So I need to go back and say, well, I found some really important things that could affect me doing what I want to do. And I implemented some things that I thought would help. Did they help? Is it better or not? And then the last thing I need to ask is, well, having done all these things, what's changed? Has all of this action and responding to things and seeing the things that are important and doing something about it, has that changed the situation? And if so, how? And then we could go back from here to here. What we've got here is a risk management process. And all we're doing is asking questions. Oh, here we go. It's hard to do, isn't it? I'll get you to do it next time, Miriam. So, the first thing is, oh, you can't see red, can you, from a distance? Everyone knows you can't see red from a distance, isn't that right? Or green? You know that, do you? Never write with red or green. So, set objectives. That's the first part of the risk process. Then risk identification. What might affect me? Second step. Third step, risk assessment. Which are the most important ones? Third step, risk response planning or risk treatment. Fifth step, risk review. Did it work? Next step, risk updates. This is easy. That is the risk management process as a thinking process. Gosh, you have gone quiet. Is that helpful? Shall I go back to the slides? See, a lot of people say risk management is difficult. Of course it's not difficult. It's just about saying, what am I trying to do? What could affect me? Which are the big ones? What can I do about it? Did it work? And what's changed? You could do that. You don't need templates. You don't need software packages. You don't need any kind of difficult tools or probability theory or any of that stuff to ask and answer these questions. That is risk management. And you'll be doing this anyway. All we're doing is formalising it, and we're writing it down so that other people can see what we're doing and learn from it. That's the only reason for having a process. But the reason we do it is because it helps us achieve what we're trying to do. That's the bottom line. It's the top line. So it's simple, it's easy. And what we do in the process is we just kind of embody these 6 questions in our risk management process. We formalise them. But you could do this process in 30 minutes. You could do that every week on a Monday morning when you go to work. What have I got to do this week? What could affect me? Which are the big ones and what shall I do? Drive home on a Friday. Did that work? I wonder what's changed. Next Monday, as you drive to work. Easy. I work with NASA on the mission to Mars. The purpose of the mission to Mars is to get people back from Mars. It's easy to put people on Mars. You just point them in the right direction and fire them off. The real problem is getting them back. And we have 300 full-time professional risk engineers asking and answering these questions about the Mars mission, using simulation models and stakeholder engagement networks and all sorts of really complex things, the same questions. Okay? Personal development, what do I want to do with my career, what could affect me, which are the big ones, what shall I, exactly the same. It's the same thinking. So once we understand that risk management is really easy, you don't need an expensive consultant like me to help you do it. You just ask the question. And it might look like this. So you establish the context, you initiate the process. What are my objectives? Identify the risks. analyse, and so on. This is just those questions. Now my question, we're going back to this question of silver linings, does this work for opportunities, or is this only about bad things? What am I trying to do, and what things might affect me, help me, make my life easier, work faster, smarter, cheaper? And out of those things, which of them are the most important? Some of them are stupid ideas, some are really good. So I need to prioritise my opportunities. Then I don't hope they happen, I make them happen. What should I do about these good things I found that could be really helpful? And then I do it and see if it worked. This is exactly the same process for threats and for opportunities. What I'd like to do in the next sort of 20 minutes or so is just to take the three most important parts of this process and give you some clues as to how you might do it for real on real projects. Are we okay with where we're going so far? Still with me? All right, good. And I should say, I didn't say, but we work in all different industry types in IT and pharma and construction and aerospace. But we also do work in your sector as well. So I've advised, for example, CEDA in Sweden, done a lot of work with them on their risk approach. I worked with Tier Fund and with Oxfam in the UK and with DFID. We've got some work with UNICEF. I'm going in 2 weeks' time to Zambia on a 3-week development mission, which is out in the bush, building a healthcare clinic and a school. No water, no electricity, no internet. That will be fun. I've worked in Ghana with some microfinance with village chiefs and in townships of South Africa. These are my personal projects. And then we've got other people who work widely with other development aid projects on our team. So this really works in your environment. And I know that because I'm actually doing it along with Mission to Mars. Okay, so let's just talk about these three things. Where am I going to find these uncertainties that could help me? And then once I've found them, how do I pick out the good ones, the most important ones? And once I've got some, what on earth can I do about it? Do I just have to hope for the best? Okay, so that's our next sort of 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, so finding opportunities. Remember, an opportunity is just a positive risk. That means it's an uncertainty that matters. We do have a small language problem here, because everyone knows that risk is bad, right? It's not actually true. If we go back, let's say, 5,000 years to the origins of the Chinese language, the word for risk, any Chinese speakers? I'm looking to see. No, okay, so that's good, because I went before. But the Chinese word for risk is weiji, and it has two parts. I can't draw the character, but wei means disaster, ji means opportunity. And in Chinese, disaster and opportunity together mean risk. It's always been that concept of, you were talking about balance. It's been part of the British mentality, the Dutch mentality, and the Italian mentality when we had that whole idea of exploration in the Middle Ages, when we were going to the east looking for spices and for treasure and gold and so on. And the idea of setting sail on a merchant trip, the word to set sail in Old Italian is risicare, which means to make a trip. And the problem with your trip was you either came back fabulously wealthy or you sank. and you risked the ship, because you risked it either made you rich or made you dead. So now the British did this clever thing. We invented insurance. And so Lloyd's of London started in the 1700s, and we insured the risk, which meant we insured the voyage. And we took money from the rich people and we gave it to the people, the families of the people who died. That's how insurance works, right? But the idea, because you've paid out on the loss, we came to kind of associate insuring the risk with insuring the loss. But the original idea was always positive and negative, that this uncertain voyage could result in really good things or really bad things. And together, that's the risk. And we just have to balance it off through the insurance. So it's always been a double-sided concept, but we just focused on one side. And now, if we think about the word opportunity, it also has a number of different meanings. So we could talk about an opportunity to succeed, an opportunity to deliver benefits, an opportunity to make a difference. That is not the kind of opportunity we're talking about here. That's just the outcome of our projects, or the outcome of our efforts. We're talking about something in the future that might not happen. If it does happen, it helps us. That is not an opportunity to succeed. Or we might talk about an opportunity to do something. We might be able to partner with somebody, we might be able to develop some continuous improvement to our processes. That's not the same thing either, because it's not an uncertainty, it's a choice. You either do it or you don't. Or we talk about an opportunity to do something different, scope creep. We might be able to deliver these services to a neighbouring community or somebody else. Not the same thing. So if we think about other words, we might think about good luck. Oh, that was nice, I'm glad that happened. I wish I'd seen that coming. Or, in your dreams, something nice, or your fairy godmother comes and gives you 3 wishes. We actually have, with NASA, we have fairy godmother workshops, where I, as the facilitator, offer everybody 3 wishes to improve their project. If you could imagine anything, what would you like? Or if an alien came along, we found aliens on Mars, and they said, we have got the solution to one of your problems. Which one would you like us to solve? What would we ask for? What would we want? And it's just that kind of creative thinking. So looking for uncertainties that matter. And we could, with our opportunities, try and use the same techniques as we use for threats to find them, things like brainstorming and workshops and checklists and so on. But the problem with these techniques is that they tend to be threat-focused. We're used to the idea of looking for bad things. We don't really know how to find good things. So maybe instead we could find some 2-dimensional techniques that specifically look for opportunities and threats together. And what we want to do is to encourage people to kind of think outside the box, right? So here's 3 suggestions for 2-dimensional risk identification techniques that find threats and opportunities together. One of them you will know. SWOT analysis. O stands for opportunity, T stands for threats. What we're doing is we're saying, what are we good at? What are our strengths? So what? What could that do for us on our project? Because we have great reputation, because people really want to open their doors to us, because we have committed donors who are going to be faithful and loyal and keep giving, because we have opportunities on the ground, people come and invite us in. Those are our strengths. So what? What might happen because of those strengths? And here are some weaknesses. I won't tell you what your weaknesses are, perhaps you know already, but we're useless at prioritising projects, so we have a very high turnover of people in the field, or whatever it might be. Issues with
how did you know?
Security or something. And so those things are true, they're weaknesses. So what uncertainties could hurt us as a result of that? Another thing we could do is to challenge our assumptions and constraints. You've got to do this, you can't do that, we hope this happens. Might be wrong. That's an uncertainty. If you make an unsafe assumption, or you have an invalid constraint, then it will affect the way that you plan your project. Maybe we should challenge that. Is that really true? Is there uncertainty in this assumption? If it was untrue, would it matter? If an assumption is uncertain, and if it was wrong, it would matter, it's a risk, right? Uncertainties that matter. And the other is fault tree analysis. You perhaps know with the idea that you can say, a bad thing might happen, yes, but how? And what would drive it? A benefit tree is just the same. A good thing might happen. We could deliver early. We could actually get increased productivity. We could, but how? What might drive that? And look for the same positive things in the same kind of thinking approach that we would use for negative things. So basically, the same kinds of techniques that we would use to find bad things work for good things, as long as you switch your mentality to say we're looking for the uncertainties that matter because they could help us. Okay, and as I say, thinking outside the box is the goal. That means we have to think differently, think of things that we haven't thought of before. And the problem with thinking outside the box is that very often the management don't like it because it gets messy. And do you have boxes for your cats in your countries? Yeah, okay. Don't do that. Think inside the box, only inside the box. And a lot of managers are like that, aren't they? All right, now, if we work out some good things that might happen that could help us, some of them will be stupid ideas and some will be really, really brilliant. So we need to, which are the most important, work out which are the most important. You're probably used to a grid. Has people seen a kind of traffic light grid like this before? Yeah. Probability and impact, how uncertain, how much does it matter? Okay, it's quite simple, and then we've got these traffic lights. Red is not for danger, red is for stop. Stop means you can't carry on as you are going to if you get something up here. Big chance of happening, big impact. Okay, stop means look at this. Green means go. If you've got something that either won't happen or doesn't matter, you just carry on as you are. Yellow, watch, be careful, monitor. So that's kind of how that works. And we're quite familiar with those ideas. You have to define what you mean by your terms, then we rank the risks, and we put them on the grid and see what colour they are. Well, what about opportunities? Could we use something like this for an opportunity? Well, an opportunity is the same as a threat. The only difference is the sign of the impact, right? So why don't we just do this? We'll have one grid for threats which have negative impacts, either small or big, and then we'll have one grid for opportunities that have positive impacts. So this will be wasting time or wasting money, a little bit or a lot. This will be saving time or saving money, a little bit or a lot, or enhancing productivity or enhancing benefits or performance, which might or might not happen. An uncertainty that helps us, as well as an uncertainty that hurts us. We could just do that, couldn't we? There is actually a little refinement to this that we actually use in the PMBOK guide and in Prince 2 and some of these other methodologies, which is to flip over the opportunity side, so you'll see it goes low to high, then high to low, down here, and you flip over the opportunity side to bring the two red zones together into the middle. Why would you do that? Well, it looks pretty. Some people call this the butterfly matrix, but the real reason you do it is because it creates a zone, an area of focus. The two red zones come together in the middle, containing the worst threats and the best opportunities. And so those are the places you stop and look at first. Here we've got things that are likely to happen, really painful. Here we've got things that are likely to happen and fabulously helpful. Surely those are the places to start, and then we kind of work out across the grid as we need to. So this kind of double matrix, a mirror matrix, gives us the opportunity to prioritise opportunities in the same way that we would for our threats. So clearly the things in the red zone are most important. Actually, they're easy to get because the probability of this opportunity happening is higher. So we don't have to do very much to make it happen, and if it happens, it's really, really helpful. A very high probability of a very high impact. These are the low-hanging golden fruits. Get those first. Okay? Then our second priority might be these over here, also still have big benefits, although their probability is low. We might have to work a bit harder to get things that are in this kind of area of the matrix. Then we've got things which are up in the top right-hand corner. The benefit is not so good, but they are quite easy to get. They're kind of, well, we may as well, whilst we're at it, let's have those. And the ones in the bottom right-hand corner, well, don't bother. They're probably not going to happen, and they don't really help us anyway. So, simple prioritisation, just by plotting them on your grid and then looking at the position and deciding these ones are clearly where we need to spend our limited effort and resources. You could do that, couldn't you? Really easy. So that's how we do that, and then we have to decide what to do. I've now found some great opportunities as well as some slightly scary threats. So we better have some good responses. And what we need to do is to respond to opportunities. When you ask people about risk responses or risk treatment, typically they have 4 things in mind. And these things have jargon names, they have kind of code word. The first we call risk avoidance. Risk avoidance is about trying to remove the bad thing altogether so that it can't happen. Another option might be risk transfer, get somebody else to take the bad thing away. Maybe we have to pay them to do that, but we transfer the liability and the ownership to someone else. Then we have risk reduction, or some people call it mitigation. Let's make the risk smaller so that we can accept it and deal with it. And then the fourth option, I call it the forgotten response. If I can't avoid it or transfer it or reduce it, I can't really do anything. Well, there is a fourth response, which is risk acceptance. Let's just take the risk, but do it with our eyes open. Monitor it, make sure that we know what we're doing. So that's what people would typically think of, and you might call these the 4 T's. Some people call this terminate, transfer, treat, and tolerate. That's another sort of model for the same thinking process. So that's what you would typically do to treat your risks, but there's a problem. That only works for the bad ones. You don't want to avoid or transfer or reduce your opportunities. We need to do something different for opportunities. Now, fortunately, we can use the same thinking that we have for our threats to decide how to respond to our opportunities, because an opportunity is the same as a threat, just the sign of the impact. So, we could, if we generalise what we're trying to do with these threat strategies, we could try to find a positive equivalent. So, here for threat avoidance, we're trying to take the uncertainty away. This can't happen. The equivalent for an opportunity is to be aggressive towards it, to take the uncertainty out by saying not it can't happen, but it must happen. It will happen. And we call that exploiting. You kill the threat, you capture the opportunity. You can't do that to very many, but some of them you can. Let's just do it. Let's put it in the plan, make it happen. With threat transfer, you pay someone else to take the bad thing away. With opportunities, what we want to do is to pay someone else to bring it in, to make this good thing happen. So we want some kind of collaborative work, like sharing. We can change the size of an opportunity, like we can reduce the size of a threat, but we want to grow or enhance or maximize the size of an opportunity. And the last option is not just to do nothing, it's to have active risk acceptance for opportunities. Let's just wait and see, but watch it in case it changes, in case we can influence it in a better way. So now what we have is 4 options for threats and 4 options for opportunities, the same kind of breadth of treatment options that are available to us to try and make good things happen on our projects. So we know what we're trying to do. We found some good things that might affect us. We pulled out 4 or 5 or 10 really important ones. Now we know what we should do. There is another option you could try, but we really don't recommend this. If the risk comes from this direction, then you're in trouble. Actually, do you know ostriches don't do this? It's an urban myth. It's to do with the sand dunes, and it just kind of looks like it. But people do it for sure. Let's just pretend there's no risk, and maybe I'll get lucky. Well, maybe you won't. There's another question after what shall I do? The process doesn't finish here, because we've got this next question: did it work? And in between what should I do and did it work, there's these 2 little words: do it. And this is the bit that mostly gets forgotten. And let me just illustrate that with this little riddle. Some of you might have heard this before. It's quite simple. There are 5 frogs sitting on a log, and 4 decide to jump off. So how many frogs are on the log? And the answer is 1, or an alternative answer?
0.
Why 0?
Because it affects the others.
Rocks a lot. No, okay, they're both the wrong answers. Another answer, maybe? The right answer is 5, because they just decided. And there's a big difference between deciding and doing. 4 sit there and say, oh, we could jump off. We really could. We probably will. And then they don't. And the situation stays just the same. And that's what we do with our risk management. You write the risks in your risk register, you plan some actions, and then you file it. And you do nothing different. And the worst thing is you think you've managed the risk, and you haven't. What we need to do is to do something different. We've got to jump. We've got to implement the actions we said we would and get the frogs off the log. And then maybe we've got some other issues we need to deal with as well. But we've got to take action, otherwise we don't manage anything. You identify, analyse it and stop, it stays the same. So it's about risk management. Okay, well, I'm running out of time, so I'd like to allow you to ask some questions if you'd like to do that. So let me just wrap up with some summary of what we've said so far. Not all risk is bad. There are uncertainties that matter out there that could help you in delivering your really, really important projects. And we call those uncertainties opportunities or upside risks. The good news is you don't have to do anything different to manage them. You use the same risk management process that you use for your threats to manage your opportunities. So it's easy to do, and there are huge benefits. It really makes a difference. Why do people do this? Real organisations like yours do this in practice for a number of reasons. One is that we don't have to invent another opportunity management process. We use an existing process, so we get double the benefits. 2 for the price of 1. You minimise your threats and maximise your opportunities. And that's really motivating for people, to have a structured way to make their projects more successful by working faster, smarter, cheaper. Let's go looking for those good things and not just hoping it turns out okay. And then it helps us to be more innovative and creative by going and looking for things that would help us. It makes us more creative so that we don't miss opportunities and just walk past them. We see more of them and we turn some of them into benefits, which means that our projects ultimately are more successful, which means that we deliver the change and the benefits that people so desperately need. That's what our projects are for, and that's why we're doing it. So risk management really can help us. It can help us to find opportunities, to pick out the good ones, and to make them happen. with some fairly simple steps. Steps that are to do with thinking differently about uncertainty that matters. It's not just that risk management can do this, it really must do this. So life is risky, we know that. Projects are risky, the development aid business is risky. Any of these things, they have massive uncertainties. And some of those things are bad. And you have to be, and of course you are, looking out for those things and stopping them happening. But some of those things are good. And we can create silver linings using the risk management process to spot and capture more opportunities. Well, I hope you found that useful and challenging and giving you some sort of different ideas. I've put the slides in PDF format. I've given those to Nancy, so those are available if you want to have copies and think about them afterwards. If you want to find out more, then those are my contact details. There's a YouTube channel with 50 videos, all free. Papers are free. Everything is free on the website. So do feel free to come and have a look, or you can just send me a note and I'm happy to help. But that's all I want to say sort of on the formal side. I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have.